Chapter 571. Warm sunlight streamed through the enormous windows, casting onto the magnificent and spacious bed. A pretty woman was lying on the bed. She had skin white as snow and exquisite facial features. She was like a princess. The sunlight seemed to be too bright. The woman frowned and woke up. As soon as she woke up, she felt like her mind was completely blank, and her head was throbbing. It was like something had siphoned everything she had in her mind. It wasn't just her mind that was feeling empty. Her heart was the same. Who was she? Where was she? She heard water flowing and looked toward the bathroom. Was someone washing up in there? Who was it? She lifted the blanket and got off the bed. Her bare feet stepped on the soft, fur carpet. Although it was freezing outside, the room was air-conditioned and as cozy as it was in spring. The woman surveyed her surroundings. The room's decoration was mainly in warm yellow tones, emphasizing a creamy theme. The bed looked like soft cotton candy, while the couch looked like milky white clouds. There was a massive photo on the wall. It was of her falling into a man's embrace while wearing a bridal gown. The man who was holding her was tall and incredibly handsome. She went to the dressing table and saw that she looked exactly like the woman in the photo. That was her. Was she married? She still had countless questions when the bathroom door suddenly opened. The man from the picture walked toward her wearing a bathrobe. The photo of the man was already very handsome, but somehow, he looked manlier in person. He came out of the bathroom slightly soaked. He had tried to hold back his cold temperament, but Olivia still sensed danger coming from him. There was a long scar on his bare chest, which looked out of place for a man who seemed so noble. "You're finally awake, Liv." Olivia didn't reply. She pointed at the picture on the wall and asked, "What's our relationship?" Ethan wanted to wrap his arms around her, but she stepped back cautiously and stared at him. Ethan noticed the crystal candle holder that Olivia was holding. She was hostile toward him. It was different from what he had imagined. He thought she would become as pure and innocent as a baby after she lost her memories. Or like a newborn kitten. He didn't know why she was so alert. He quickly pushed down the questions in his mind and looked at her lovingly. "We're married, Liv. What relationship do you think we have?" he asked. Ethan tried to get closer to her tentatively. Olivia had a weird feeling about him. She didn't feel like he was a stranger. So, it was apparent they were acquainted. But if they were a married couple, why didn't she feel love when she looked at him? She only felt complicated emotions. It was like a voice telling her to stay away from that man. Was it hatred, or was it fear? Ethan took away the candle holder in her hand while she was still spaced out. Then, he gently held her hand and said, "I know you have many questions. I'll answer them slowly, but the most important thing now is to get some food in that belly. Aren't you hungry?" Olivia looked down at their interlaced fingers. They were wearing the same ring. "Are you really my husband?" Husband. Olivia hadn't addressed Ethan as such for a long time. He felt his heart flutter and his throat tighten. He suppressed his excitement and said with a smile, "Of course I am." He leaned in next to her ear and said suggestively, "Do you need me to prove it?" Chapter 572. Ethan tugged lightly, and Olivia's body fell into his embrace. His skin was still wet from the shower, and he smelled like the shampoo he used. Olivia pressed her palms against his chest. She felt like his body temperature was a little hot to the touch. He whispered in her ear, "There's a mole on your inner thigh." His breath, which smelled like peppermint, brushed her skin and made her blush. Her blushing face reminded Ethan of the time when they just started to date. His gaze became softer. He raised his hand to tap her nose and said, "I'll stop teasing you. Let's have some food first. I'll tell you everything you want to know after you've eaten." Ethan held Olivia's hand and led her out of the bedroom. There were a lot of pictures of the two of them in the corridor. She was all smiles in every single picture. She was bright and cheerful, like a miniature sun. For instance, there was a picture of her on a swing in a garden full of roses. Ethan was pushing her from behind. She was looking at him with a sweet smile. He also had an unmistakable gentle look in his eyes. There was another photo of her emerging from the water and grabbing Ethan. He looked like he didn't know what to do with her, but his lips were curled into a smile. Another picture was of her chasing after butterflies while he watched with a gentle gaze and one hand in his pocket. The images looked very natural, with no signs of being staged. Every one of them gave her a feeling that she was having fun and he was smiling. The house was decorated very cozily. She felt at home. She had lived there before. Olivia subconsciously went to the door of a room. She had a feeling that she had been there a lot of times. This room is. Ethan didn't expect her to be so hung up on the baby room, even after she lost her memories. Let's eat first. He led Olivia downstairs. The dining table was full of tasty food. Madame Burgess smiled brightly and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, come sit and eat. I'll be serving up 2 more dishes." Ethan politely helped Olivia pull out her chair. From Madame Burgess' warm reception, Ethan's casual attitude, and fresh flowers on the table to the spotless environment, everything she saw was a sign of a cozy household. It should have been a place that she loved, but Olivia felt like she didn't want to be there. Especially the flowers on the table. They made her think of a dark, cloudy sky, withered flowers on a table, and a woman standing alone at the window looking out to the snow. What's wrong? Is the food not to your liking? Ethan was very sensitive to Olivia's mood change. Olivia shook her head and said, "No, the food's fine." She was indeed starving. The living conditions on the island were harsh, so she had a bigger appetite than usual. Olivia noticed that Ethan was silently staring at her while she was eating. He also had a warm smile on his face. Like the photos, his eyes were filled with love for her. After the meal, Ethan asked, "There's a new movie recently. You used to love the actors in it. Do you want to watch it with me?" Olivia pointed at her head and said, "I want to know how I lost my memories." Ethan reached out, and Olivia put her hand into his palm in confusion. He brought her to the room she looked at just now. "Liv, do you want to know, even if the memory was unpleasant?" Olivia nodded. "Then, open the door." Olivia stood at the door and suddenly felt an inexplicable tightness in her chest. Then, a wave of pain washed over her. Chapter 573. Olivia's subconscious told her not to go into the room. The hand she placed on the doorknob froze. A warm hand enveloped the back of her hand. Ethan whispered gently, "Don't be afraid. I'm here with you." The door was opened. There were no monsters. There was no blood. It was just a pink room with all its furnishings removed. The room was almost empty except for a carpet and some baby toy decorations that hadn't been taken down yet. It was clear that the room used to be a nursery. Olivia could feel a weight on her chest, and her eyes became sore. She walked into the empty room and stopped at the position where the crib used to be. She slowly crouched down. Olivia couldn't remember anything, but her body brought her to the location reflexively. Did something used to be here? Ethan was shocked to see what Olivia was doing. He sat down beside her and said, "A crib." Olivia observed the empty room as thoughts began to fill her mind. "We had a baby." "Yes," Olivia asked with quivering lips. "Then, where's the baby?" "We lost it due to an unexpected premature birth." Although it was an established fact, Olivia's tear ducts reacted quicker than her brain when she heard the baby was gone. "The baby's gone. How could that happen? Didn't you say I love the baby?" Ethan met with Olivia's urgent gaze and stroked her hair tenderly. "Liv, your health wasn't the best, and there was a car accident. That's why the premature birth happened." "An accident? So, did I lose my memories because of the accident?" Olivia murmured. "It was part of the reason. You couldn't cope with the death of the baby and fell into depression. Then, there was the shock of both your parents dying. That's why you lost your memories." It was one blow after another. Olivia clutched her chest and said, "My parents are dead, too." "Yeah, Mom died from an illness, and Dad went into a coma due to an intracranial hemorrhage. The treatment lasted for a long time, but he didn't make it." Olivia held her head, unable to accept this reality. Ethan hugged her gently and comforted her. "Don't be afraid, Liv. You still have me. I'll be with you forever. We can still have babies after your body recovers." Olivia choked and couldn't talk. She wanted to say something, but her mind blanked out. If she forced herself to recall, she would have a splitting headache. She leaned in Ethan's embrace and tried to calm down. She managed to calm down after a while. Tell me more about our past. I don't remember anything. How did we meet? Ethan carried her to the window, and they lay on a soft rug. The temperature in the room was cozy even though it was snowing outside. Olivia leaned on Ethan's chest and felt his warmth. His deep and pleasing voice rang in her ear. 11 years ago, I was lying on the floor, bloody and near death. You found me. You were still very young then. But you approached me with kindness even though you were scared. You called emergency services for me and wiped the blood off me with your handkerchief. Ethan couldn't help but smile when he recalled the first time they met. I was almost dead, but the warm smile on your face when you left is forever engraved in my mind. I swore to find you again to repay your kindness. Then, what happened? I was swamped then, and a few years passed before I went to see you. I went to your school to make a speech. I can still remember when I saw you on the field. You were in your uniform, and your hair was in a ponytail. You looked more mature but still sunny and in the prime of your youth. An image flashed through Olivia's mind. It was a handsome man in a white shirt. But the image passed too quickly, and she couldn't tell who the man was. Chapter 574. Ethan continued to reminisce about their lives together. Olivia couldn't remember anything, but she was able to pick up some clues from Ethan's words. I used to love you a lot, right? Ethan looked at her tenderly and said, did your memories return? Olivia shook her head and said, I just think that the man you're talking about was such an outstanding individual. But she gave up her family and her studies just to be with you. If she weren't hopelessly in love with you, she wouldn't have given up her dreams for you. Ethan had a complicated expression on his face, which confused Olivia. He looked into the distance and murmured, yeah, you would never have given up so much if you weren't hopelessly in love with me. Liv, I'll love you with everything I have. I swear on my life. He hugged Olivia so tightly that she could barely breathe. She had no choice but to push against Ethan. Then, Olivia realized her right arm wasn't as nimble as her left. She looked and saw a scar. My arm. Ethan quickly let go of her and said, you suffered an arm injury, but it's getting better. Olivia tried to move her right arm and found that there weren't many issues other than being less supple. But she thought it was strange. Why would I get injured out of nowhere? What injury was it? Who hurt me? It was a bad man, but he already got what he deserved. You don't have to dwell on it anymore. Olivia blinked and realized that Ethan was keeping a lot from her. Ethan was good to her, but she was still on guard against him. She felt like something was wrong but couldn't put her finger on what it was. You're interested in practicing medicine, so I've arranged an opportunity for you to study abroad. Didn't you say I gave up everything for marriage? Why would you let me continue my studies now? Ethan's gaze was deep and distant, with an unmistakable hint of remorse. I've noticed that you haven't been as happy as I thought you would be in the past few years. Liv, you're free to do whatever you want to do from now on. I'll always support you, okay? Okay. Olivia was still a little out of it. She had just woken up, after all. She didn't know her past and was unsure of her future. She had no idea what she wanted to do, so she just agreed to Ethan's proposal. She figured that he loved her so much and probably wouldn't do anything to harm her. Also, it was apparent that Ethan was wealthy from the decor of the house alone. What could a rich and handsome man like him possibly want from an orphaned and bankrupt housewife? Olivia figured that furthering her studies might not be a bad idea. She thought that Ethan was trying to make things up to her for the loss of her baby. Maybe that was why he was so considerate but cautious. She had many questions in her mind, but she decided to leave them for the next time. They still had plenty of time. She could take her time to understand everything slowly. Also, Olivia poked Ethan's chest with her finger and asked, how did I used to address you? Ethan gulped and said, you'd call me, honey, when you were in a good mood. You'd call me by my full name when you were in a bad mood. And, Ethan paused for a while, and Olivia waited for him to continue. Then, Ethan whispered in her ear, you like to call me, Ethan, when we're in bed. Olivia blushed and punched him lightly on the chest. You pervert. Ethan grabbed one of her hands and kissed it. Liv, Ethan's phone rang. He looked at the caller and let go of Olivia. I need to take this call. Chapter 575. Ethan quickly walked out the door and whispered, "Hello. Mr. Miller, is Mrs. Miller awake yet? How is she feeling?" Chris asked. Olivia had been knocked out for 3 days since she was injected with the drug. Chris figured she had to have woken up. Ethan roughly described Olivia's condition to Chris, who sighed in relief. "That's great. I was afraid that." Chris had been feeling anxious for the past few days. He remembered the time when Olivia had a high fever a year ago. The amount of red blood cells and white blood cells she had was unbelievably low. That was usually caused by chemotherapy. But there weren't any issues on Olivia's medical examination report, so Chris didn't bring it up. The drug Ethan injected into Olivia was unique. It would have adverse effects when injected into people with weaker immune systems, like kids, pregnant women, and the elderly. Other than that, it would also be detrimental to the health of cancer patients. Chris would sometimes think about how pale and sickly Olivia looked a year ago. "What are you afraid of?" "I just thought Mrs. Miller's health hasn't been too good. I was afraid that her body would reject the drug. I'm happy to hear that everything is fine." After some thought, he added, "You should keep a close eye on Mrs. Miller's condition during this time. Contact me immediately if something goes wrong." "Okay." Olivia noticed the caller ID on Ethan's phone. It was Chris Atkins. She wondered why Ethan would want to take the call away from her even though it was a man. Then, she figured the villa wasn't cheap based on the decor and size. It was clear that Ethan was well off. Perhaps he was talking to the upper management of his company or an important client. It was understandable. Olivia didn't know Ethan's identity yet. Although she had questions, she was sure she could get the answers she sought eventually. She stopped overthinking and started to take a look around the house. She noticed that the house's decor and every little ornament were based on her preferences. Madame Burgess had just finished doing the dishes and was holding a cucumber. She chewed on it and said, "Of course, all these things were picked out by you, Mrs. Miller. You've given everything in this house some thought, even the slippers. That's probably why you found the place familiar despite your memory loss." "Was I ever close with him?" Madame Burgess took another bite of the cucumber and said, "That's for sure. You two got married because you were so in love. But I was working in the Miller residence then. I did hear that you learned how to cook for Mr. Miller's sake and that you cooked for him every day. Sometimes, Mr. Miller would cook for you, too. You used to love the apple cider that Mr. Miller made." Madame Burgess had a happy expression as she said, "Back then, Madame Eugenia was still alive. She would call you over during autumn. There was a tall chestnut tree in the yard, which you would climb up and shake the branches of while Madame Eugenia would collect the chestnuts that fell. And Mr. Miller would be cooking in the kitchen. Those were the days." From Madame Burgess' story, Olivia could tell that she and Ethan used to be a loving couple who were made for each other. When she glanced at the pink roses on the table, an image of a woman sighing deeply at some withered flowers flashed in her mind. She unconsciously picked up the roses but was brought back to her senses by the sharp pain from her finger. Olivia looked down at her bleeding finger and felt like it was surreal. "Mrs. Miller, you've hurt yourself. It's my fault for not removing the thorns. I'll get you a band-aid." Ethan reacted faster. He had already taken Olivia's hand, put the bleeding finger into his mouth, and stopped the bleeding. He spat the blood out into a trash can and applied a cute-looking band-aid on her finger. "You have to be more careful next time," Ethan said. Olivia was stunned. She nodded, then raised her head to meet his loving eyes. Chapter 576. It was the middle of the night. Burgess had already returned home. Ethan and Olivia were the only ones left in the villa. "Are you tired?" Olivia shook her head and said, "Not at all. I'll watch TV for a while." She felt a little awkward. Even though the two of them were already married, she still wasn't that familiar with Ethan. She was still reluctant to be intimate with him. Ethan noticed her unease. He wasn't about to rush things. "Okay, I'll watch with you." Olivia was watching some soap drama while Ethan was typing away on his laptop by her side. Olivia would glance at him from time to time. He was wearing gold-framed glasses. The overhead light cast a warm glow on him and made him seem gentler. It was as if Ethan felt Olivia's gaze. He raised his head. Ethan was wearing a set of black silk pajamas. The pajamas had excellent texture, and they emitted a soft glow under the light, which contrasted the bright golden glow from his gold-framed glasses. Ethan gently adjusted his glasses with his middle finger and looked at Olivia. He asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" Olivia inexplicably started to blush from Ethan's casual movement. "Nah, nothing." Ethan set his laptop down and asked, "Are you thirsty or hungry? You didn't eat much at dinner just now. Do you want some supper?" Olivia's eyes widened as she asked, "You really can cook?" Olivia thought that Madame Burgess' words were over the top. She thought the other lady was just intentionally trying to make Ethan look good. Ethan rolled up his sleeves and patted Olivia on the head. "Wait here." Then, he entered the kitchen. Cooking noises could soon be heard coming from the kitchen. Olivia had thought that Ethan would, at best, make her some spaghetti. But, looking at how busy he was, she began to think he might be cooking up a fancy feast. The fire from the stove flickered and cast some shadows that danced on Ethan's tall and slender figure. After an hour, Olivia heard Ethan's voice coming from the kitchen. "You can wash your hands and prepare to eat." After she washed her hands, Ethan had already set the food on the table. Camarones a la diabla, ceviche, and aguachile. Olivia's eyes widened as she looked at the spicy-looking dishes. She thought an elegant man like Ethan would make some fancy food for her. But instead, it was all regular street food. Ethan pulled out a wet tissue and cleaned his fingers. "I didn't have enough time to make anything too fancy. Have a taste," Olivia said in a muffled voice. "I didn't expect you to make food like this." Ethan smiled and said, "You used to pester me for street food and cold beer. I don't think those food trucks were hygienic enough. So, I learned how to make the food myself. At least the food's cleaner that way." Olivia glanced at Ethan's hands. His skin was pale, so the blisters from the hot oil were very clearly visible. "You're hurt." "It's nothing. Do you want me to help you peel the shrimp?" Although he was just asking, Ethan had already put on disposable gloves and started to peel shrimp for Olivia. Olivia felt Ethan was very attractive when he was focused, whether working or peeling shrimp. Olivia felt warmth in her heart. Although she didn't have many relatives left, he was so good to her that she thought he might be someone she could rely on in the future. Chapter 577. Olivia blushed as she looked away. "The shrimp looks tasty. Let me try it." Before she could pick one up, Ethan quickly fed one of the shrimps he peeled into her mouth. "Is it good?" Olivia took a bite. The spiciness, umami, and fragrance exploded on her taste buds. The familiar taste slid from the tip of her tongue to her stomach. She hadn't eaten camarones a la diabla in a long time. She stuck her tongue out because it was too spicy for her, and she gulped down some lemonade. "Is it too spicy?" "A little, but it's delicious." Olivia's face was flushed from the spice, but she still craved more. Ethan peeled very quickly, but Olivia ate even quicker. "Slow down. It's a pity that you're not running a food truck. You're wasting your talents." Olivia praised Ethan while she was drinking some water. Ethan looked at her with a tender smile. Did she really think he would cook for just anyone? Perhaps it was because Olivia hadn't tasted such good shrimp in a long time. The spiciness would not stop her from eating more. She wasn't able to peel shrimp as quickly as Ethan. As soon as he finished peeling one, she stuck her head over, opened her mouth, and chomped on the shrimp. She ate the shrimp in Ethan's hand in the blink of an eye. Ethan was stunned. In her hurry, Olivia's tongue touched his finger. Even though he wore disposable gloves, he still felt that soft touch. The fleeting contact made his heart flutter. His heartbeat began to quicken. Olivia didn't know that her actions had aroused Ethan. She began to look very delicious to him. He wanted to devour her. But he knew their relationship was still in the early stages, and Olivia was still wary of him. Ethan took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't afford to be impulsive. If he acted rashly, he would destroy the image he had built up over the past few days. He had already stood up before Olivia turned to look at him. "I'll get you some fruits." Olivia sighed contentedly as she watched Ethan walk away. Then, she went on a random social media platform to make a post. "Guys, can you believe it? I woke up and lost my memories. I thought I was doomed but found out I was already married. Now, I have a handsome, considerate, and well-built husband. He makes a lot of money at work and still cooks supper for me at night." Her post soon got replies, and it quickly garnered a lot of attention. "I don't believe you, unless you send your husband over to me and let me check if he really has a sexy body. I'm in Treledo, but I can see the scheme of the previous comment from a mile away. I'm new here. May I ask where I can get a husband like that? Will the government send one to me? And if he doesn't have abs and can't cook supper, can I return him?" Ethan finished cutting up the fruits and saw Olivia typing furiously on her phone. Olivia noticed Ethan approaching with the fruits and quickly set her phone aside. She looked at him guiltily and said, "You're so fast. I had cut them up in advance and put them in the fridge. I just needed to plate them." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. She didn't expect Ethan to be so considerate. Ethan seemingly guessed what she was thinking. He set the fruits down and put his hands on the edge of Olivia's seat. Then, he slowly moved his body over and loomed over Olivia. Ethan encompassed her with his intense presence and said gently, "Of course, I'd know your habits. I love you so much." Chapter 578. Olivia seemed to have reverted to the state she was in before their relationship started to fall apart. She was innocent, cheerful, and filled with hope every day. Even when Ethan was busy with menial tasks, he would perk up immediately when he saw her smile. His casual expression of love sent Olivia's heart aflutter. She could scarcely hold her urges back when she was close to such a handsome man. Olivia looked away and said, "These cherries are so big and sweet. I'm glad you like them." Ethan seemed to be busy. He made so much food but didn't eat any himself. He went back to work on his laptop after he peeled all the shrimp for Olivia. Olivia couldn't help but ask, "I think I haven't asked you before. What do you do for work?" "Management." Ethan provided a concise answer. "No wonder you're always busy." She didn't know Ethan was just trying to distract himself with work. She was too cute. Ethan feared he wouldn't be able to hold back much longer if he didn't divert his attention. Olivia ate a lot of shrimp and fruit. She saw Ethan working with a serious expression when she turned around. She held a cherry near his lips and said, "Do you want to eat some?" She used to feed Ethan frequently in the past. He didn't even need to look and was able to suck the cherry up into his mouth. The tip of his tongue unintentionally touched Olivia's fingertips when taking the cherry from her. It made her blush and sent a shiver down her spine. "I've eaten too much. I'll go walk it off." Olivia had eaten her fill. So, she got up and went upstairs to alleviate the awkwardness. She didn't notice Ethan's intense gaze. Truthfully, Olivia felt pretty good about the day she spent with Ethan. His tenderness and thoughtfulness effectively dispelled her unease about losing all her memories. He treated her like a princess. Even the unopened shower gel was her favorite scent. She was surrounded by a ring of bubbles with a sweet fragrance in the air. Love was budding in Olivia's heart. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She frowned and inhaled sharply. Was the food too spicy for her? She didn't know why her stomach hurt so much. Olivia decided to start controlling her diet and not indulge in overeating anymore. The pain slowly subsided after more than 10 minutes. An hour had passed when she came out of the bathroom. She thought Ethan would still be working, but she saw him leaning against the bedside when she opened the door. Ethan patted the bed and said, "Come here, Olivia." Olivia had tried to avoid this the whole night, but she failed. She stood awkwardly as she tried to think of a way to refuse Ethan without breaking his heart. "Ethan, I lost my memories, so," Olivia stammered. Before she could finish, Ethan smiled and said, "I know. I won't lay a hand on you." He lifted the blanket and walked toward her. He gently held her hand and said, "You lost your memories and feelings for me. I understand that. Liv, I can give you time to accept me again and to fall in love with me again." Under his gentle guidance, she followed him back to the bed in a daze. Olivia took out her phone to check the social media post before she slept. She saw that it already garnered hundreds of replies. She saw that a lot of replies were poking fun at the well-built body that she talked about. She quickly updated me on what had just happened. Guys, I think I might have saved the galaxy in my past life. My husband is so gentle and considerate. Impossible. That can't be. Such a perfect man would never exist. You must be dreaming. Are you writing a telenovela? I don't believe that such a perfect man could exist. Someone smack her on the head and wake her from her delusion. Human nature is inherently ugly. If a person seems perfect, it's only because he's good at disguising himself. You might need to be careful. No one in this world will love you for no reason. If someone treats you well for no reason, they must be after something. Olivia's eyes lingered on this comment, and the smile on her face froze. Chapter 579. The comment brought Olivia back to reality. It was true that everything she saw and heard since she regained consciousness was trying to convince her that she and Ethan were in love and that Ethan loved her deeply. It was like a gift box perfectly wrapped with no imperfections on the outside. Even if the loss of her baby was an accident, what about her arm? Who injured her arm? When she was taking a bath, she noticed a lot of scars and wounds on her body. None of them were lethal. They were more like scratches, scrapes, or bruises. Her palms were calloused. She had a beautiful figure, but it wasn't the delicate, frail kind. Instead, she had a more athletic build. The wounds seemed to be recent, and she seemed to be someone who frequented the gym. Or else, she wouldn't be able to get such a build. All these things directly contradict Ethan's statement that she was a housewife. The most important thing was that the registered numbers in her phone consisted of Ethan and several bodyguards. The phone was clearly brand new. Even the number might be a new one. Her past was like her memories. It was completely wiped clean with no trace that it ever existed. Olivia immediately began to feel wary. What are you looking at? It's already so late. Ethan's hand suddenly reached out and touched her. Olivia quickly turned off her phone's screen and placed it under her pillow. Nothing, I was just reading some novels. Did I disturb your sleep? Ethan moved over and pressed his chest against her back. But Olivia's back was covered in cold sweat. It felt like a scene in a thriller novel where the protagonist suddenly realized that the killer was right behind her. Olivia's body tensed up, and even her breathing froze. She didn't know that Ethan understood her well. He felt her body tense up and knew that something was wrong. You didn't disturb me. It's just that it's bad for your eyes to look at your phone in the dark. Let's sleep. Ethan wrapped his arms around her like nothing was wrong. Olivia stiffened up and didn't know how to position her limbs. She kept thinking about the comment saying that Ethan might be after something. Wasn't Ethan her husband? What could he possibly be after? Wasn't she already bankrupt? Was it that her father left her a hefty inheritance before he died, and Ethan was after that? Or maybe he had to keep her alive to receive the inheritance, so he pretended to be nice to her. Perhaps he already had another woman and was waiting for her to be tricked so he could take the inheritance, kick her out, and live happily ever after with that other woman. Olivia thought that must be it. The novel she read just now had that exact plot. With her mind filled with the idea that Ethan was trying to kill her for money, she started to shiver. Can't sleep. Ethan's gentle voice rang next to her ear. When Olivia heard his voice, all she could think about was that it was the killer's final moment of mercy before ending her life. I might have slept for too long before. Olivia asked cautiously, did my father leave me anything before he passed? Yeah, I'll show you some other day. She knew it. Ethan had revealed his true colors. She would be done the moment she signed the papers. If you still have trouble sleeping, why don't I tell you a story? Do you prefer Cinderella or Snow White? Olivia grunted and said, do you think I'm a child? Olivia could hear Ethan chuckling softly. She could also feel his chest vibrating because they were so close. Damned cheater. Even his chuckle was so sexy. Ethan told her a story of his own accord. She fell asleep in his arms after 10 minutes. He ran his fingers across her face. She was still the same naive woman she used to be. She was like an open book. After ensuring Olivia was asleep, Ethan took her phone from under her pillow and found the post she had made through the browsing history. Olivia was in the habit of keeping a diary. It seemed like she kept the habit even after losing her memories. She even posted about them on the internet. Ethan didn't mind it because she didn't reveal their personal information. But he was lost in thought as he stared at the comment that got Olivia worked up. Chapter 580. The following day, Olivia was woken up by the bright sunlight. She slowly opened her eyes. They were bright and pure like those of a newborn. "Did you sleep well?" Olivia met Ethan's smiling face and thought he was the most charming man in the world. Even though some might think it to be an exaggeration, Olivia believed that to be true for Ethan. Even as she looked at him so closely, she was amazed at how good-looking he was. No matter what angle she looked at him from, she couldn't find even the slightest imperfection. When he didn't smile, he was cold as ice. But when he did smile, his demeanor brightened up. Olivia replied, Yeah. In the past, she was constantly stressed and had trouble falling asleep. She would suffer from insomnia most nights. Even if she did manage to sleep, she would be plagued by nightmares. Last night, she had a nice dream and slept through the night. That's great. Good morning, honey. Ethan leaned over and kissed her on the forehead lightly. Then, he got out of bed and went to wash up. Olivia touched her forehead in a daze. It was a quick kiss, but she felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Kisses from a handsome man hit differently. A thought flashed in her mind. Don't be silly. You don't know what vicious lies he's hiding under that handsome appearance. His smiles are just attempts to throw you off. Ethan saw Olivia still sitting on the bed with an upset expression after he came out of the bathroom. He had no idea what she was thinking. He leaned on the bed, and his refreshing fragrance from just having washed up wafted over to Olivia. "What's on your mind?" He spoke so naturally, but his voice was full of gravitas. Every syllable he uttered made Olivia's heart flutter. "Nothing at all. I'll go wash up now." Olivia quickened her steps when she heard Ethan's chuckle. Once again, she updated her post on her phone. "But he called me his wife. He's really handsome, and he's just my type. You're just hopelessly in love. You're the type to defend him even as he hurts you. I pray for your well-being. Can't you just think for a second? The devil always whispers sweet lies before doing horrible things to you. Why are you being tricked so easily? You're useless." Olivia thought about it for a while and came to the conclusion that she was indeed useless. It was just a kiss. In this day and age, it was really nothing major. Besides, she had even been pregnant once before. No matter what Ethan was after, he would eventually show his true colors. Last night, Ethan said they would be going out to shop and watch a movie. So, she picked out a winter skirt and a jacket from the closet. The form-fitting skirt accentuated the curves on her waist. The only bad thing about it was that the zipper was hard to pull. Her right hand wasn't flexible enough, and the zipper got entangled in some hair. It only got tighter as she tried to pull on it. Olivia was close to cursing at the skirt. "Let me do it for you," Ethan said gently. Olivia quickly said, "No need." Ethan's actions weren't as gentle as his words. He leaned in, and Olivia instinctively used her hands to support herself against the wardrobe. "Don't move. I'll untangle your hair. It might hurt a little." They were standing very close together. She could feel his breath on her ear when he talked. "Okay, be quick," Olivia urged. Ethan's fingers would occasionally touch Olivia's skin, albeit fleetingly. But every touch caused her heart to flutter. The closet wasn't as spacious, and her face quickly flushed as the temperature rose. "It's done." Olivia sighed in relief when she heard that. She was about to move away when Ethan circled his arms around her waist and said, "Liv."